Brady Tkachuk is a Florida Panther. The fantasy hockey world's on fire, and we're going to talk all about it on today's show.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Buckle up, and here we go, my fantasy fanatics. There is a lot to get to on the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Steele and Flip. And oh, goodness me, the Florida Panthers have Brady Tkachuk in their clutches, Mr. Roden, but there are a lot of different angles that we have to cover on today's show. How did this go down? What does it mean for the Florida Panthers? Fantasy values of guys like Matthew Tkachuk and Carter Verhaeghe. We're diving into Ottawa deep as well. Where do they go from here? What does this mean for your fantasy squad? The end of an era? Not so much in Ottawa, Steele, but Brady Tkachuk's on the move. And today's show, we're diving deep into this move and how you can capitalize it with your fantasy team.
Ooh, baby, the stars have aligned. The sun is bright. The butterflies, the birds are chirping. This is a fantastic day, if you ask me. Nothing makes me happier than when it's down bad in Ottawa, baby. Wow, what a trade this was. This is just absolutely hilarious to me. You knew that this was coming years. This is years in the making. Regardless of Brady Tkachuk just lying straight through his teeth for years now and months and months and months, telling point blank to the media and to the fans, I want to win a Stanley Cup here. I am committed to the Ottawa Senators. No, you're not. You handcuffed them. You gave them pretty much only two teams to trade them, to trade yourself to. And obviously one of them being the Florida Panthers, where everyone wants to go now. He teams up with his brother. He teams up with a back-to-back Stanley Cup champion in the Panthers. Obviously missed the playoffs this year, but this is amazing. And obviously the Senators fans are going to give him so much you-know-what when he makes his return to the CTC next season. So I had to get that off the chest. Just because you know what we like to do here, throw a little bit of shade, a little bit of pettiness down into the Ottawa Senators' way. But obviously, there's a ton of fantasy value here. And when this trade happened, your immediate attention goes to the Florida Panthers. We knew without Alexander Barkov for a full year, without Matthew Tkachuk for half a season, they were most likely going to miss the playoffs. And that is why, fantasy-wise, they fell off a little bit. Now you bring in Brady Tkachuk. You have a healthy 100% Alexander Barkov, 100% Matthew Tkachuk. This team is back into contention, and they jumped already to the third spot for Stanley Cup favorites going into next season. The fantasy value gold mine now lies with the Florida Panthers. And when you look at the makeup of this team, and especially that second line of Matthew Tkachuk, Brady Tkachuk, and Sam Bennett, you got the Bash brothers, you got the Banger League beauties all on that one line together. I mean, you got to target them, because when you specifically talk about Banger League beauties, and you and I know this the best because of the way we run our fantasy leagues, Brady Tkachuk might be the best out of anybody out there. And that's why, to me, he is always a first-round draft pick in those Banger League formats, because he gets the hits. He gets the penalty minutes. He's a 70-point player. He gets power play time. He does everything you could really ask for. And now being able to play with his brother, regardless about how you feel about him, and trust me, I'm not a big fan of him overall. On the ice, I am, though. He's a number one target in my opinion, and I love this trade for the Florida Panthers.
There are a lot of ways I would like to take this, and we're going to get into the Ottawa Senators side of things, because this is also going to cascade into other deals, Steele. You know, you and I have been talking off air all day about they're pushing hard for Jason Robertson, Jordan Kyrie's in the mix, Mason McTavish. I want to be very clear about, I understand that the front office, Steve Staios' hands might be somewhat tied if a player is 8 months out. He said, I don't want to re-sign here. So I do appreciate that some of this, you know, we like to hand out trade grades, that maybe it's TBD on the Ottawa side of things, because clearly these first round picks, and I did just want to bring that up, what the trade was, 2 first-rounders, a second-rounder in 2027, and an additional top 10 protected pick in 2029. Those first 2 first-rounders come this year. Those are obviously going to be included to add some bodies. They got Timmy Stützle. They got Drake Batherson. They got Jake Sanderson on the back end. On a good day, Linus Ullmark is a top 15 fantasy option. On a bad day, he's a mess. This is not good for your top 6 forward group on paper. I know the Ottawa media is getting behind this is good for the room and they were ready to move on. I'm not fully buying into the roses side of things for the Ottawa Senators. When your captain wanted out, he didn't see it there. And it's a trend. Minnesota, Carolina, Vegas, and also the last team is eluding me, but it's the 4 big American clubs that these
I think Minnesota was in there too, actually.
Minnesota's in there. It's Florida, it's Vegas, and then it's Carolina. It's those 4 all these guys want to go to. It's, to me, maybe more indicative of how the impact of international hockey has gone down, number 1. And number 2, the Ottawa Senators were almost on the outside looking in last season in the postseason. They had 99 points. They slide into that wild card spot number 2, and they get pummeled in the first round. So this isn't a team that can afford their glue, their heart and soul, and a guy that, when healthy, Steele, is a difference maker at the other end of the ice, scoring 30-plus goals. So I want to turn it back over to you. I got a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
But immediately what I think is, okay, yeah, it's nice that the Ottawa Senators are pushing for these quote-unquote big names. From what I've read, Jason Robertson doesn't want anything to do with Ottawa. He is not interested in signing there.
Yeah.
So the player out there is already not interested. Mason McTavish is a wild card, and Jordan Kyrou has been very inconsistent. So you lost your heart and soul, and you got to go out there and get some of these pieces that are ho-hum at times. The work is cut out for Steve Staios in this offseason, so be wary of what happens in Ottawa fantasy-wise next season.
Absolutely. And let's not get it twisted. Steve Staios was absolutely handcuffed here.
Exactly.
Again, Brady Tkachuk bailed on this team. He quit on this organization. He has 2 years left on his contract. He says for months and months now that he wants to remain here and he wants to be here. And then again, in closed quarters, behind closed doors, he tells the front office, hey, I want out. I don't want to be here anymore. And honestly, it's not surprising because when you really look at how Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk have spoken about just Canada in general, there's no question that this was going to happen. They have said nothing but negative comments about this country, about playing in Canada, about being in the nation's capital. And you kind of see that around the league, honestly, with all of the Canadian teams outside of Montreal. Nobody wants to play in Ottawa because of how the media personifies them. Same for Toronto. Vancouver's a dumpster fire. Winnipeg is almost inhabitable, the way just living there. Calgary has been kind of a mess since trading Matthew Tkachuk years ago as well. Outside of Montreal, Canadian teams are down bad right now. And
True.
That's why a lot of these American players don't want to play here. They don't want to play in Canada. And, obviously we're later in this episode, we're going to talk about the influence that Team USA has with the Olympics and the international teams. But that just seems to be the trend now, like you said, where a lot of these American players who play for Canadian clubs, they pick 3 teams. It's Carolina, it's Vegas, it's Florida, maybe Tampa Bay as well. And that's where they want to go, and they end up making trades there because all of them have no trade clauses, and that's how it works. So, yeah, Brady Tkachuk's a quitter. He bailed on the Ottawa Senators. We'll dive a little bit more in depth about the overall fantasy value for Florida and Ottawa when we come back after the break. And again, some of the influences that might come next in some shocking trades.
What it means also for what's cooking in Ottawa. We're breaking it all down so you can capitalize and get your fantasy team in a spot to get this offseason paper, my friends. We're here all summer long. Tap into the pod. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Hims. ED is a way more common thing than most guys think. Millions of men deal with it at some point. Hims offers a simple, convenient way to take care of your health by connecting you with a licensed healthcare provider online and giving you access to personalized treatment options from the comfort of your own home. No awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines, straightforward processes designed to make getting care easier. Taking care of yourself shouldn't feel complicated, boys, and Hims makes the process private and easy to navigate. It's healthcare built around around your schedule and comfort. Something's already uncomfortable to talk about. The last thing you want is a complicated process. Having the ability to start online from home makes taking the first step feel more manageable. The first step is key, lads. Get in on it. On Hims, simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, hair loss, weight loss, and more. Hims.com/LockedOnNHL is where you want to visit. That's Hims.com/LockedOnNHL for your free online visit. Hims.com/LockedOnNHL. Prescription required. See website for details and important safety information. Cytofol is the generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark of Viatris, specifically LLC. Hims is not affiliated with or endorsed by Viatris. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, the big stage for soccer. It's here. Every match feels that it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal can change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. That's what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Right now on FanDuel, they're giving fans another reason to stay locked into every single match, with every goal pays. Bet on a match, get bonus bets for every single goal scored in that match. More goals mean more bonus bets. All you have to do, turn on your token. We've been loving that token turned on, Steele. The Qatar match, 6 goals, $30 for your boy in bonus bets. We'll take that all day at FanDuel, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com right now and get started.
And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Make sure you get your daily fantasy hockey fix completely ad-free by joining the Everydayer Club today. Start your 7-day free trial right now and get closer to your team without the interruptions. Click the link in the show notes to learn more, or go to LockedOnFantasyHockey.supercast.com to claim your free trial today. Flip.
Yes.
I mean, there's just so much to break down with this trade, but let's get into the fantasy value for both these teams now. So obviously with the Ottawa Senators, they ship out Brady Tkachuk to Florida. The makeup of their offense now, it doesn't look phenomenal. I mean, you still got Batherson, you still got Stützle. Dylan Cousins is a banger league beauty. Honestly, I really liked Warren Foegele when he got traded there, and I thought he played pretty good in the playoffs as well, regardless of how it turned out for the Ottawa Senators. Obviously, Jake Sanderson on the back end being the top guy there. Thomas Chabot brings it. Carter Yakimchuk's a good young defenseman with a lot of potential. But when you look at the Ottawa Senators lineup now, and obviously Steve Stale's front office, they're going to be making a lot of moves. They got first-round draft picks this year as well. They're more than likely going to bring in another young centerman in a different trade, in the next couple of weeks or leading up to the draft or sometime in the summer, free agency in July as well.
Yeah.
When you look at Ottawa, do you think, A, they can get back to a playoff spot? B, who is the number one guy? Tim Stützle, Drake Batherson? Do you think maybe they fade off a little bit with point production because of the departure with Tkachuk? How do you feel about the overall value of the Ottawa Senators?
First and foremost, I would say that their top priority has got to be find another winger to play with Timmy Stützle. Because, I like Drake Batherson, but Drake Batherson is a guy that you might plug and play around that top 6 a little bit more. They got to find a guy that sticks with Timmy Stützle. That would be my main focus here for this offseason. And when you're talking about the playoffs, because, you and I like to focus on fantasy, of course, we got to still bring in what does this mean for the team's overall success. I would say the number one guy for me, Steele, headed into next season, it's close. Timmy Stützle would be the obvious one. Let's not forget about what Jake Sanderson brings to the table. I know you're not. I'm just bringing it up for others. 54 points in 67 games, banged up once again, 3-game winners. Only 8 penalty minutes, and then you take a look into the peripherals. You get the block shots, but the hits are low. So when I look at the 147 shots, you look at the lower peripherals in certain categories, it might not jump off the page, but let's not forget that this kid is only 23, 24 years old and just here now in his prime. Stützle is the obvious one. But Jake Sanderson, to me, I wouldn't be surprised that in some leagues, he's off the board very close to Timmy Stützle or maybe a round later. So my answer is this. I think right now, the obvious take is they're going to be out on the outside looking in. They traded arguably their best player in division. They got to go up against Brady and the reinvigorated Matthew Tkachuk, which I want to talk about in a sec. Let's talk about the Panthers and overall these peripheral fantasy pieces. I'm going, they missed the playoffs. Jake Sanderson, Timmy Stützle, those are the two gems. And then you're into a whole different tier. We like Cousins. We like Drizzy Drake. But they just lost their most elite fantasy piece. And it'll be intriguing to know what that actually means for their standings and success.
I really do think it bodes well for guys like Dylan Cousins and Shane Pinto down the middle. They get maybe a little bit more opportunity and some confidence on power plays. And again, just a little bit more ice time without Brady Tkachuk there. Again, it all depends on what happens from here on in the franchise for Ottawa and who they bring in potentially. But I think it bodes well for those two guys. Tim Stützle, I think he's got a lot on his shoulders now, a lot of pressure to be the number one guy offensively and really lead this team. Again, the captaincy's up. Who gets the C in Ottawa? And I know that doesn't play into fantasy value, but it goes a long way for giving a guy confidence and being the face of an organization, being the leader of this organization too. I think it goes a long way for those guys. Jake Sanderson, debatable top 10 defenseman fantasy-wise, and honestly, just the way he plays the game too. So I think you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head there with that take on Jake Sanderson. And to the Florida Panthers side of things, though, they actually got the trades going a little bit early prior to this. They actually traded Mackie Samoskevich to the Seattle Kraken and acquired a 2026 first-round pick and a conditional 2027 second-round pick. So you could kind of feel something was happening with that trade. Like, why would they move Samoskevich, a young player,
a good young player,
a lot of potential. Yeah, a lot of potential, who's young as well. You could feel that coming on here. Again, let's get to the Florida Panthers now. You get Alexander Barkov back. You obviously got Matthew Tkachuk back. Brad Marchand was banged up later in the season. I mean, this team, depending on what happens, and we haven't even touched about Sergei Bobrovsky because there's some rumors going around the mill about his potential future with the Florida Panthers. This team should be the favorites. And I know Carolina just won, but this team, when they are healthy, they should be the favorites to win the Cup next season. And there's just so much fantasy value with them up and down the lineup. You go to that third line with Anton Lundell and
Steele.
Luosterainen.
Thank you.
Like what are we talking about here, Flip? Flip, what are we talking about? We talk about gold mines. This is the number one gold mine. You're hitting the jackpot with the Florida Panthers.
What we're talking about is, first of all, thank you for teeing it up because I'm looking at this and things will shake up, but Eetu Luosterainen, Anton Lundell, and Brad Marchand are easily second line or peripheral top six forward group members on most teams in the NHL, aside from like 4 or 5. So you're looking at also arming Paul Maurice with now another line to roll, and they're balanced. Like, you've got offensive upside in 2 really good shooting wingers in Reinhart and Verhaeghe flanking Barkov. Now you got Tkachuk and both Tkachuks flanking Sam Bennett and Anton Lundell. Ottawa tried to get Anton Lundell real bad. Bill Zito off the top rope once again. I believe they tried to get a couple of other pieces and he said, not doing it. So shout out to Bill Zito, number one. But the last point I wanted to make, and, the forward group is where you're going for value. And I'll turn it back over to you to talk about Bobrovsky because I love that angle as well after the break, is Forsling, Ekblad, Mikkola, Seth Jones. They might not all jump off the page fantasy-wise. All 4 serve different varying levels of value. Very good, solid top 4 defensive group. Check all the boxes that you gave Paul Maurice to dominate next season. Look out for this Florida Panthers team. Question marks in the cage.
Look out indeed. This team is going to be, in my opinion, they should be Stanley Cup favorites going into next season just with the makeup of the offense right now. And we'll get to, again, what other trades might come out of this, the Team USA influence, and what's going on with some of these trades that we've seen happen over the last couple of months, all of that coming up next. But first, this episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. If you've got a sweet tooth like I do, you know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all the sugar. That's why Fruity Rainbow 5 Hour Energy Shot brings that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. Fruity Rainbow 5-hour energy shot treats your taste buds to an explosion of fruity flavor with a tasty caffeine kick. It's a quick, easy way to satisfy that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. The zero sugar treat that's sweet tooth approved. We like how convenient it is too. It's just a small, portable shot we can grab whenever we need a little pick-me-up through the day. It's become the go-to when we want something sweet without going overboard. Get candy-flavored chaos with Fruity Rainbow 5-hour energy shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review for your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden. Flip, again, obviously just so much fantasy value with this Florida team, up and down the lineup. I think the blue line, while maybe it doesn't jump off the page value-wise, guys like Gustav Forsling, Seth Jones, Nico Mikkola especially, they bring value as streaming options. Obviously with Forsling and Seth Jones and even Aaron Ekblad, those are draftable defensemen still later in the drafts. But Uvis, Balinskis, Nico Mikkola, even Kulikov to a certain degree, those guys are great streaming options throughout the season for blocks, for hits, for penalty minutes. I think the blue line maybe not one of the best fantasy value-wise. You can still find value throughout the season with that blue line. However, Sergei Bobrovsky, and I don't have, how many years left does he have on his contract? Is he going on UFA last year? He's a UFA. So Sergei Bobrovsky is an unrestricted free agent here. And look, there's obviously some conversations going out right now about what his future is in the NHL, and specifically with the Florida Panthers. He's 37 years old. He's going to be 38 years old at the start of the season in September. He's still a serviceable goaltender. And honestly, you can't put a lot of what happened last year on him. I mean, when you're missing the best two-way centerman in the game in Barkov, you're missing an absolute force with Matthew Tkachuk, Seth Jones, Aaron Ekblad also banged up throughout the season. It's not the same team that he's had over the last 4 or 5 years in Florida. And so you can't put a ton of blame on him. However, it wasn't one of his best seasons. An 877 save percentage, a 307 goals against average. That's really the first time. That is his worst season in the National Hockey League throughout his career. When you have to go all the way back to 2011 to really find anything sub 900, above 3 in the goals against average department here. Do you think he remains a Florida Panther? Does he sign one of those mid-tier contracts, maybe a year or two contract with Florida, or does somebody swoop in and take a shot on a veteran goaltender like Bobrovsky?
I've been all over this bit of news because I have him in my Keeper Dynasty League, and my team really needs some work still. Sergei Bobrovsky wants to be in Florida. He loves it there. From what I'm reading, this is just a dollars and cents thing, and his agent really having a lot in his corner to play with here. This is one of the best goaltenders in NHL history, and the numbers back him up. 2 Cups, 2 Vezinas, multiple All-Stars. This goaltender has been instrumental in taking this very team to 3 straight Stanley Cups before this previous season. And the numbers are there. When he left Columbus, he wanted to go to one team, and that was Florida, and he came here and performed. So there is a lot of weight to kind of go this guy's way, because also in the postseason run, Steele, this guy in his career has a plus 900 save percentage. He has 6 shutouts, and he has just gotten it done for Florida. So what I would say is this. The market out there, we know it's thin. There's some big names, Hellebuck's in the mix. We got some goaltenders that might be shifting around. I think with what you just saw, with a major name added to this team, Bobrovsky comes back under a good contract. We expect this team to be much better than, I was just looking this up because they really fell right out of it last year, finishing 3 points less than the New Jersey Devils. This is a bounce back candidate. So is, though, Matthew Tkachuk, because with Brady playing on his wing, and you take a look at him being banged up and maybe some people overlooking him, 34 points in 31 games for Matthew last year. There's some risk with the injury, but the Bash brothers, I see bounce back for Bob, bounce back for Matthew Tkachuk, and I know it's just one player, but when you had the foundation of what Bill Zito has done, what Paul Maurice has instilled, and multiple banners in the rafters, Brad Marchand's on the third line with Anton Lundell and Lusterainen, be
There's
careful.
just so much going for Florida
Be careful.
right now.
This is a fantasy goldmine.
It absolutely is. And before we wrap up this episode, just to quickly talk about, again, maybe some other trades that come out of this, shocking surprise of what just happened over the last 24 hours. Also just, Team USA and their influence on what transpires and really just bringing some of these American-born players back to the States, to some of these clubs. And I mean, you can go to what happened at the Olympics and prior to that with Bill Guerin and Quinn Hughes. Obviously that trade happened in December.
4 nations.
But when you look at the influence that a general manager and him, managing a country for the Olympics and what he can do behind the scenes and in the locker room and behind closed doors. And that Bill Guerin's in the ear of Quinn Hughes and hey, do you think Jack Hughes might come over here and, get the brothers to team up a little bit? Like that for sure happens. And we just saw that happen, obviously, with Brady Tkachuk. So what's your take on how the influence of a country and especially when you look at the Olympics and the international stage, how that influences these situations when players have no move clauses or no trade clauses, and then that really handcuffs the general manager and what kind of deal they can make?
My take is twofold. Number one, good fantasy GMs, they know what's going on with rosters. They've got their finger on the pulse. All those terms we throw out there, they know the rumors and what's going on. Excellent GMs that win the money, they can predict and really read into some of these deeper trends going on. And it might seem obvious to some people out there, but what we've said all the time that we've recorded this podcast, Steele, our show is for everybody. The newbies, the vets, the guys in the middle, the gals who are just starting out. We want people to dominate regardless of where you're at. And one of these neat little stories that was just kind of where there's smoke, there's fire. Now it's a full-blown inferno. Zach Werenski is also another name I'm hearing that, I know it's Columbus, but he wants out of a smaller market club. I would even almost call Columbus, a small Canadian market because of the disrespect it gets. So you got guys like that. You already saw it with Quinn Hughes. Tkachuk's on the move. Larkin wants out. Again, I know Detroit's a great market, but the influence of international hockey, all of these guys being together and playing, what does it mean for a guy like Austin Matthews, Steele? I'm going to be real upset if I hear a 14 list. Carolina, Vegas, Florida, and Minnesota. So what I would say is it's very real. Pay attention.
It is very real. I wouldn't be upset if Minnesota was on that list.
I'm sure.
I'm copping a Matthews Minnesota jersey almost
2 of them.
Immediately.
2 of them.
But yeah, that's just what happens, and it's been happening for years now. Again, it's a little bit tough for Canadian teams when you have some of these American-born players who don't find success right away. And obviously, kudos to the Montreal Canadiens. They have a lot of different players from different countries on their team, but they're buying into the system, they're buying into the culture, and they buy into the city, and the fans back them. So
it's a destination again.
A lot of respect to the Montreal Canadiens right now. They are the top team from Canada, and there's no question about it. Hopefully, we can see some great things happen in Toronto next year, and maybe they get Austin Matthews to change his mindset a little bit. But that's where the fantasy value lies. There's always some gold mines to be picked up throughout the draft. Great fantasy value throughout all the Canadian teams still, but you got to pick them in the right spot, and that's what Flip and I are here to showcase all summer long. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, the follow button, so you get all of the latest episodes. Again, you can also follow us on social media, X at @LO_fantasy NHL, TikTok and Instagram. And we'll see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.